Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on Episode 3 of The Great Jahy Will Not Be Defeated. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So last we left off, Jahy sort of lived up to the title in that she won something of a Pyrrhic victory. She ran into her old, minion, I guess, Druge. You know, a person who she would really just put through the ringer for no better reason than because she was in charge. And, you know, she sort of found out that Druge is adapting to Earth far better than she was, having found several shards of the Mana Crystal and living in opulence and with great wealth and seemingly having some sort of an office job, whereas Jahy has to live in a crappy apartment, you know, pinching her pennies, so to speak, so that she can afford food and all that. However, Jahy did end up finding a considerable shard of the big Mana Crystal, so, you know, it's not all bad when you get down to it, even if she is still forced to be a waitress. So, I do find it interesting that Jahy is carrying around this big shard on her person. Because, like, it's one thing when you wear the pendant, like, that's something, that's normal pendant behavior, but wearing the big shard along with it, I feel like that's more unwieldy than anything. And I guess more to the point, like, it just feels to me that this is the setup for something bad to happen, you know? Like, sure, she can't exactly spring for the security system that Druge has to keep the shard safe, but at the same time, I feel like nobody's gonna bother breaking into her crappy apartment lest they, earn the ire of the landlord. And, like, more to the point, just looking around Jahy's apartment, there's nothing of any value to steal, so, like, as long as it's just cursorily hidden, then, you know, she wouldn't have to worry. Okay, so she's wearing this because, with this big Mana Crystal, she'll never have to return to her diminutive form again. However, it seems to me that, this is probably, something that's too good to be true. You know, something bad's gonna happen. Either it's going to be drained of its power, or she's gonna lose it. I mean, one way or another, it seems like she's sort of lost the plot here. She's like, oh, I can work until last call today. I'm not under any power restrictions. However, her first priority shouldn't be working as a waitress. It should be trying to find more shards. So, I expect she's only going to realize this after the fact. Yeah, here we go. Like, why am I bothering working? Like, I don't choose to maintain this form so I can work, right? Man. You know, it's never a good thing when you lose track of your priorities. And sure, it might ingratiate her with the boss, but, is that really going to help you in the long run if you want to rebuild the Dark Realm? Wow. So it seems like even a small, tiny bit of praise is enough to get Jahy to continue working. And... oh, okay. So she's bragging the mana crystal can do everything, but like... maybe you should look a little bit higher than petty chores such as cleaning the sink. Because, I mean, sure, like, the gunk might be recalcitrant and unlikely to go away, but, you know, maybe use, like, an actual cleaning project rather than the magic power of a mana crystal. So I feel like just using the mana crystal so flippantly, like, it's gonna be out of power, you know? I mean, it is amazing how it can seemingly do just about anything by applying it, but at the same time, there are probably better uses for it than getting rid of the smell of cigarette smoke and cleaning the exhaust fans over the stove. Now, it's kind of interesting that Jahy's just sort of divulging that, you know, she intends to restore the Dark Realm and that this thing is dangerous and all that. I mean, as dangerous as it is, seemingly, it's not enough to maintain her form. You know, this is why you don't go cleaning those exhaust fans. Like, those things get loaded up with so much grease and gunk, like, man. I guess if there's one benefit to Jahy's form, it's that her boss is probably more likely to pity her. Man, unfortunately she's not being pitied with a bigger paycheck or some leftover food. I like how Jahy's complaining about how nobody recognizes how magnificent she is. It's like, okay, I guess, you know, you're not really that magnificent, you know? So naturally, Jahy lies. You know, like, I came to visit you, Druj, because I'm feeling generous, but, you know, it seems that this is more of a fishing expedition to get information she doesn't want to come right out and ask about. Alright, so I'm wondering what the catch is here. You know, Druj is saying, oh, this is a big, spectacular mana crystal, but, you know, what's the catch? I mean, seemingly Druj indicates that it should be, you know, big and powerful, but if it's already been drained, then, ooh. So Jahy's making the mistake of, bragging again. You know, maybe she should stop doing that, but I feel like, we might not have much of a plot if she immediately learned her lesson. So I can only imagine, like, Druj is gonna, you know, want something related to the mana crystal. When it can't do it, then, you know, it's over. I guess, you know, first things first, where did you find it? Well, it turns out it was just in a bird's nest, you know? Like, that doesn't make for a good story. You can't really boast about that. Yeah, so I guess it's pretty obvious she would have to lie, but there's gonna have to be some sort of consequences, right? I mean, she's just immediately agreeing with whatever Druj supplies. Like, I guess that's a good rule for improvising, but, you know, I feel like she's gonna get called on her lies at some point, and it's not gonna be pretty. So, despite everything, you know, despite the disparity in their situation, Druj is still incredibly servile. Man, I feel like there's gotta be something more to this. Like, Druj is gonna do something, like demanding to embark upon the next expedition with Jahy. But obviously Jahy can't agree to that, right? I feel like this is going to end up being something where Druj just decides that she's not worthy to accompany her idol. Wow, okay. So Jahy's claiming she killed off the entire species of giant evil bird. So I guess, conveniently, you won't find any more anywhere. Yeah, see, this is the problem when you just exaggerate and lie. I mean, this isn't even really exaggeration. I think this is just bald-faced lying at this point. And come to think of it, if you had to fight off all these gigantic birds, it doesn't explain why they would have a mana crystal. Because at least with crows, they're intelligent birds and they like shiny things, so, it would make sense if a crow were to stumble across such a crystal, they might decide to take it. Ooh. Okay, so Druj has seemingly taken the wrong meaning, that there is a much bigger mana crystal. Jahy was talking about the one she's wearing, but there's one that's much bigger, allegedly. And, boy howdy, that implies they've made a whole lot more progress than they actually have. And I feel like there's going to be some sort of disastrous consequence, It is also interesting that Druj was sort of worried that Jahy might be growing weak in this world, which, by all indication is probably correct. I mean, well, no, she certainly has grown soft, even if you just, observe how she treated that little chickling. Like, I feel like an evil person probably would have just squashed it for fun, Oh boy. So it really is over for Jahy if Druj has collected merely a truckload this month. Like, I feel like there can't be that many more truckloads to remake the whole thing, Because, it was big, but it was only so big, Like, it could be contained within a building. So I feel like, it's only a matter of time. For someone who is so concerned about Jahy going soft, I feel like her bursting into tears is a pretty solid indication of softness rather than disappointment. I mean, I guess maybe you could say she was disappointed in herself, but, ooh. Man, it's just time to lie again. She's caught at the restaurant in her uniform. She has to do something like, oh, I'm, in disguise, but, that's not gonna cut it. She's already displayed herself as being magnificent and, above it all, but someone who is magnificent and above it all wouldn't be working as a waitress, right? Wow. So that's an interesting lie that Jahy owns the place. I feel like that lie doesn't even get you out of the deep water you're currently in, She claims that this place is something she can use to gather information on mana crystals, but I don't know. I feel like, compared to what Druj does and the outcome she's produced, something like this is nothing. Alright, this is growing a little bit tight with Druj immediately saying oh, you intend to lord over the humans as well as the demons and all that. I get that Jahy was probably an overbearing tyrant and thus Druj is disposed to immediately interpreting things in the best way possible to appease her, but I feel like at some point the rubber has to meet the road here, and you have to realize that this whole thing is a farce. Although fortunately for Jahy, I get the impression the boss is gonna treat Druj pretty well. I mean, Druj is immediately hostile because the boss is just, mildly familiar with Jahy. I guess that's something, imagine your tyrannical boss being, palled around with, a normal person, that's gotta be a bit shocking. Wow. Jahy really is lucky that her boss is so understanding that, she's even possibly entertaining the idea of lying and pretending to be an employee. On the other hand, I feel like Druj, this whole thing should be so patently suspicious that, maybe she should start questioning things. Wow. So it just never ends. Jahy's lies are being exposed in real time. Oh no. Oh boy, imagine saying I've never been in such a lowbrow restaurant before. I feel like the boss should probably say something like, hey, that's not true. But, it really is over. And there's, no possible way to rework the whole boss-employee relationship on the fly. Man, the worst part about all of this is that Jahy has to lie and wait on her associate, and, the restaurant isn't even open yet, so presumably things are gonna hit the fan when other customers show up, and they naturally expect the waitress to wait on them. I don't know how Jahy could possibly lie her way out of that, but I feel like whatever she does, Druj is gonna buy it hook, line, and sinker. So I'm wondering if this is a sincere declaration that, this pub food is the best thing she's ever had in the human world. I feel like she's really just trying to suck up to Jahy. I don't know. It's being played as sincere, but I don't know. Druj seems like the servile, sniveling type where there might be a grain of truth that she likes the food, but at the same time, I don't know. If she's eating, Michelin star meals and living in a penthouse, surely this is inadequate. Now, I noticed there's been no mention of payment, so I imagine that as repayment for this little farce, Jahy's gonna have to foot the bill, and it's probably gonna stretch her budget to the point of breaking. And you know what? I think it's what she deserves for lying. Oh, here we go. Man. Imagine being presented with a 5-digit bill like that. Woof. Yeah, is your pride really worth that much money? I feel like maybe it wouldn't hurt to just, tell the truth every now and again. And that's the other thing, you can start small with the truth. Just tell the truth in, little ways. You don't have to come out with everything. Although, maybe in the case of Jahy and Druj, it might be better to just tear the band-aid off altogether. Ooh. So I guess we're getting like a little side story something or other. A little pastiche of science fiction. Now, I guess I assumed we were going to get a preview of the next episode, or maybe like a little stinger at the end. Maybe that magical girl showing up again, but it seems like instead Jahy is now a space pirate. Pirate in the very real sense that their vessel is like a pirate ship. You know, she certainly has the ego of a space pirate that would want to conquer the cosmos. But at the same time, you know, I feel like she's kind of lacking in skill. You know, it's kind of nice that the landlord is ultimately the adversary. So I guess the question is, do space pirates pay rent? You know, I'm thinking they don't. Now, the only thing that's unfortunate about a space battle regarding payment of rent is that, you know, the landlord can't put Jahy in like a blood choke or something, or like dislocate her shoulder for not paying. You know, that really is underrated. I hope there's another dispute over rent soon. Now, you know, naval battles in space are pretty interesting because you're able to move in 3 dimensions, but it is also interesting that that ship seemingly had broadside cannons because, you know, when you get down to it, in like naval combat, you generally want to like sail up next to someone and just, you know, blast them with your cannons and sink them that way. But traditional naval combat is essentially 2-dimensional. You know, there's no vertical component to where you can travel, which isn't true in space. So, you know, it's kind of like a weird mix of old tactics and new, because sure, I suppose the principles are still the same in that you want to breach the enemy hull and all that, but with an extra dimension of movement, things get a lot more tricky. Oh boy. So they've pissed off the Federation or something, I would assume. You know, some sort of spaceborne authority. In this case, you know, the boss, the older sister who means to keep the peace through force of arms if necessary. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.